The call came on a Tuesday morning, right as I was reviewing sustainability reports at my desk. Susan's name flashing across my phone screen felt like a cosmic joke. My successful big sister hadn't called me in over 2 years. I'm Peyton, the Russell sister who stayed behind in Millbrook while my siblings chased their big city dreams. The one they mockingly called small town whenever they deigned to visit during holidays. Now here was Susan, her voice tight with barely concealed desperation. "Peyton, we need your help with the Riverside project." I gripped my coffee mug tighter, memories flooding back of Susan's last visit. She'd stood in our family's hardware store, designer purse dangling from her arm, sneering at the solar panel display I'd just installed. "Still playing with Dad's little shop, I see," she'd said. "When are you going to do something meaningful with your life?" That little shop was now Russell Sustainable Development, the leading green construction firm in 3 counties. But Susan and Cora had been too busy with their glamorous real estate careers to notice. "The project's facing some challenges," Susan continued, pulling me back to the present. "We could use your expertise." I caught Maria's eye across the office. My business partner raised an eyebrow, already knowing who was on the phone. She'd held me together through countless family dinners, where my sisters had dismissed my work as cute and provincial. "What kind of challenges?" I kept my voice neutral, though my heart was racing. "Structural issues, sustainability requirements, the usual bureaucratic nonsense." Susan's laugh sounded forced. "Nothing we can't handle with the right assistance." I walked to the window watching workers install solar panels on the community centre we were renovating. "The same project you said was too small time for my involvement 6 months ago?" Silence crackled over the line. Then, "Things have changed." "They certainly have." I picked up the morning's newspaper from my desk, studying the headline again. "Riverside Development faces environmental scrutiny, financial concerns." Maria appeared at my elbow, sliding a note across my desk. "Perfect chance," she'd written, followed by a devious smile. "Look," Susan's voice dropped lower. "I know we've had our differences, but this is business. The project needs someone with your particular experience." I thought about Dad, about how proud he'd been when I took over the store, about how he'd believed in sustainable development long before it was trendy, about how my sisters had laughed when I invested our inheritance in green technology instead of selling out to developers. "When do you need me?" I asked. "There's a stakeholder meeting tomorrow at 2, downtown office, Riverside Plaza." She paused. "Cora will be there too." Of course she would. My middle sister, always following Susan's lead, always ready with a cutting remark about my life choices. "I'll be there," I said, already formulating plans. "Send me the project files." "Peyton." Susan hesitated. "Thank you." I ended the call and turned to Maria, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "You're going to help them?" she asked, though her grin suggested she knew exactly what I was thinking. "Oh, I'm going to help all right." I pulled up the Riverside project details on my laptop. "Just not the way they're expecting." Maria perched on my desk, scanning the documents. "They really messed up, didn't they? These environmental impact reports are disastrous. And they're coming to their small-town sister to fix it." I couldn't help but smile. "Karma's a funny thing." My phone buzzed with a text from Cora. "Don't make us regret this." I showed it to Maria, who snorted. "They already should." Looking at the project plans, I could see exactly where they'd gone wrong. They'd planned for profit over people, ignoring the community impact that had become my specialty. Their mistakes were my opportunity, not just for revenge, but for real change. "Book me a hotel," I told Maria, standing to pack my laptop. "I'm heading to the city." "Give them hell," she replied, already dialing. I paused at the door, taking in the view of Main Street. The hardware store sign still hung proud, now surrounded by solar panels and green roof gardens, my vision brought to life despite my sister's doubts. "Oh, and Maria," I turned back. "Call Camden at the City Council. Tell him I might have a solution to that affordable housing problem he's been worried about." She grinned. "Already on it, boss." Tomorrow I'd walk into that meeting room and face my sisters across a conference table. They'd expect their small-town sibling to be grateful for the opportunity, eager to please. They had no idea what was coming. I grabbed my keys, feeling lighter than I had in years. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about proving them wrong in ways they never saw coming. The Riverside Plaza lobby gleamed with the kind of polished pretension I'd always associated with my sisters. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of steel and glass towers, while men and women in designer suits rushed past me, clutching coffee cups like lifelines. "Well, look who cleaned up nice," Cora's voice cut through the ambient noise. She stood by the elevator wearing what probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Almost didn't recognize you without the work boots." I adjusted my blazer, the one Maria had insisted I pack. "Good to see you too, Cora. It's been, what, 2 years? 3. Susan's already upstairs. Fair warning, she's in quite a mood." The elevator ride was silent, thick with unspoken accusations. I watched our reflections in the mirrored walls, Cora fidgeting with her pearl necklace, me standing perfectly still. "You know," Cora finally said, "when Susan suggested calling you, I thought she'd lost her mind. And now? Now I think we're all about to find out if you're actually as smart as Dad always claimed." The elevator doors opened to reveal Susan pacing outside a conference room. She stopped mid-stride when she saw me. "Thank God," she muttered, pulling me into an awkward hug that felt more like a business transaction. The stakeholders are getting restless. Inside the conference room, 8 people sat around a massive table. Susan quickly made introductions, but I was already focused on the architectural renderings spread across the surface. "As you can see," Susan was saying, "we've brought in additional expertise to address the sustainability concerns." "Concerns?" A man interrupted, his voice sharp. "The environmental impact report is a disaster. The community coalition is threatening legal action. And now you bring in..." He glanced at me dismissively. "Your sister?" "Titus," Susan warned, but I was already moving forward. "Actually," I pulled out my laptop, "I've reviewed the reports. You're right, they're concerning. But I see 3 immediate solutions." I connected to the projector, bringing up my preliminary designs. First, we retrofit the entire south-facing facade with integrated solar panels, reducing energy consumption by 47%. The room fell silent as I walked them through my proposals. Green roofs, grey water recycling, community gardens. With each slide, I could feel the energy shifting. "This," Titus leaned forward, frowning, "this would require a complete redesign." "Yes," I met his gaze steadily. "It would." "The costs," Susan started, "would be offset by federal green energy credits and increased property values." I pulled up the financial projections. "Plus, you'd avoid those pending lawsuits." A woman at the end of the table, the project's lead investor, nodded slowly. "She's right. The current design is a liability." "We need time to consider alternatives," Titus insisted. "Time?" I laughed. "Your construction permits expire in 60 days. The community's organising protests. And your funding's contingent on meeting sustainability benchmarks you're nowhere close to achieving." Cora's hand clenched around her pen. "How do you know about the funding?" "Because unlike some people, I do my homework." I turned back to the investors. "I can have detailed plans ready in 2 weeks. Full community integration, LEED Platinum certification, and positive PR instead of protests." "And what's your stake in this?" Titus demanded. "Family," I said simply, watching Susan and Cora exchange worried glances. "Plus, I hate seeing good opportunities wasted on bad planning." The lead investor stood. 2 weeks. Show us the details and we'll discuss restructuring the development team." As the room cleared out, my sisters remained frozen in their seats. The moment the door closed, Susan exploded. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. "Restructuring the development team? That was me saving your project." I gathered my materials calmly. "Unless you'd prefer explaining to your investors why you ignored basic environmental regulations." "We didn't ignore," Cora began. "Really?" I pulled out my phone, reading from their own report. Groundwater contamination risks, insufficient renewable energy integration, zero community input. Want me to continue? Susan slumped in her chair. We needed this project to work. And now it will. I headed for the door. Just not quite the way you planned. Peyton. Cora's voice stopped me. Why are you really helping us? I thought about all the times they'd laughed at my choices, dismissed my work, abandoned our family's legacy for the allure of quick profits. Because that's what family does, I said, not turning around, and because sometimes the best lessons come from your own mistakes. Outside, I texted Maria. Phase 1 complete, call Camden. We're going to need that community support sooner than expected. Her reply came instantly. Already on it. Give them hell, boss. I smiled, watching the city traffic flow past. My sisters thought they were getting a simple bailout. Instead, they were about to learn exactly what their small-town sister was capable of. And this was just the beginning. The community centre buzzed with angry voices as I slipped in through the side door. Camden had warned me this meeting would be heated, but I hadn't expected such a crowd. They're trying to force us out. A woman at the podium slammed her hand down. First they buy up the properties, then they raise the rents until we can't afford to stay. Classic gentrification playbook. I found a seat near the back, watching my sisters squirm uncomfortably in their designer suits at the developer's table. They hadn't noticed me yet. The Riverside project promises new jobs, Susan was saying, her practiced smile failing to calm the crowd. Property value increases will benefit everyone. Benefit? A young woman stood up, her eyes blazing. My grandmother's lived in her apartment for 40 years. Your benefits would price her out of her own neighborhood. I recognized her from the project files. Kaya, the local activist who'd been rallying community opposition. She was good, hitting every point I'd suspected about my sister's real plans. Cora leaned forward to the microphone. We understand your concerns, but change is inevitable. So is karma, I called out, standing up. The room turned to face me. And sometimes it comes with blueprints. Susan's face went pale. Peyton, what are you— Show them the real numbers, I challenged, walking to the front. Show them the projected rent increases, the planned evictions, the renovation clauses in the fine print. Kaya's eyes narrowed. Who are you? I'm their sister. I pulled out my tablet, connecting it to the projector. And I have the documents they don't want you to see. The room erupted as I displayed the internal memos. Planned rent hikes of 300%, targeted harassment policies to force out long-term tenants, secret agreements with luxury retailers. This is confidential information, Titus shot up from his seat, face red. Funny thing about email chains, I said calmly. People really should check who's CC'd before discussing their predatory strategies. Susan grabbed my arm. What do you think you're doing? I pulled away, showing everyone exactly what kind of development you're planning. You'll destroy everything we've worked for, Cora hissed. No! I turned to the crowd. I'm offering an alternative. I switched slides to my revised plans. Imagine this instead. Affordable housing guaranteed for current residents. Solar power reducing utility costs. Community-owned businesses. A development that lifts everyone up instead of pushing people out. The room grew quiet as I walked them through the details. Green spaces, job training programs, profit sharing with local businesses. This is impossible, Titus scoffed. The numbers don't work. Actually, Camden stood up from the back right on cue. They do. The City Council has reviewed Ms. Russell's proposal. With available tax credits and federal grants for sustainable development, it's not only possible, it's more profitable long-term. I watched my sisters' faces as their carefully constructed plans crumbled. They'd never expected their small-town sister to outmaneuver them like this. After the meeting, Kaya caught up with me outside. Those plans? They're real? Very. I handed her my card. And I'd like your help making them happen. She studied me carefully. Why? They're your sisters. Exactly. I watched Susan and Cora hurrying to their car, avoiding eye contact. And sometimes family needs to learn the hard way what really matters. My phone buzzed. A message from Maria. Camden says the council's on board. Ready for phase 2? Before I could reply, Titus approached, his expensive suit failing to hide his anger. You have no idea what you've started. Actually, I do. I smiled, remembering all those times my sisters had dismissed my little sustainable projects. I'm finishing what they started, just not quite how they planned. We'll fight this, he threatened. Good luck. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Titus, you might want to check your own company's environmental compliance records before starting any fights. I did. The colour drained from his face as I walked away. Back at my hotel, I finally replied to Maria. Phase 2 is go. Time to show them what small-town values can really build. My phone lit up with missed calls from both sisters, but I ignored them. They'd always thought success meant pushing others down to climb up. Tomorrow they'd learn there was another way, whether they liked it or not. I pulled up the community proposal one more time, adding final touches to the plans that would transform not just the neighbourhood, but my sister's entire worldview. They'd wanted my help fixing their project. Instead, they were about to discover exactly what happens when you underestimate the sister you left behind. And I was just getting started. They're trying to buy off the council members, Camden said, sliding a folder across the coffee shop table. Titus has been making rounds, offering campaign contributions. I sipped my coffee, watching morning traffic crawl past the window. Of course he has. How many took the bait? 3. Maybe 4. He leaned back, exhausted. But we still have the majority. Barely. My phone buzzed with another call from Susan. Ignored. That made 17 since yesterday's community meeting. You know they won't give up easily, Maria chimed in from my laptop screen, joining us virtually from back home. Your sisters didn't get where they are by playing nice. Neither did I. I opened the folder, scanning the documents. Look at these campaign contributions. Titus isn't even trying to hide the paper trail. Camden grinned. That's where Kaya comes in. Right on cue, Kaya pushed through the cafe door, carrying a stack of papers that made my heart skip. Got them, she announced, dropping into the chair beside me. Every zoning violation, every ignored environmental regulation, every sketchy permit, fast track from the last 5 years. I spread the papers out, matching them against Camden's documents. Perfect. Maria, you seeing this? Crystal clear, she replied. And I've got something better. Remember that sustainability grant they claimed they couldn't get? Turns out they never even applied. They just told their investors it was denied. Because actually trying would have exposed their real plans, I finished. Camden, how fast can you get a council hearing? He checked his calendar. 3 days. But Titus will. Perfect. I pulled out my laptop, bringing up the project plans. That's all we need. Kaya, how's the community petition going? Over 2,000 signatures, she beamed. People are fired up. We're planning a demonstration before the hearing. My phone buzzed again. Cora this time. I silenced it without looking. Peyton, Maria's voice turned serious. Titus just called our office. He's offering to buy us out. Says he can triple your current contracts back home if you'll walk away. I laughed. Did he really think that would work? He also mentioned something about old permit violations at the hardware store. Sounded like a threat. The cafe suddenly felt colder. Dad's store, my store now, had been my life's work. But I'd been expecting this. Send him the photos, I told Maria. Which? Oh, she grinned. The ones from his waste disposal site? The illegal one? Those would be the ones. Camden whistled low. You really did your homework. Always do. I gathered the papers into neat piles. My sisters taught me that much, at least. Always know more than your opponents think you know. Speaking of your sisters, Kaya nodded toward the window. Susan and Cora were getting out of a taxi across the street. Right on schedule. I stood, straightening my jacket. Everyone know their parts? They nodded. Maria saluted from the screen before signing off. I watched my sisters scan the cafe, their faces tight with barely controlled anger. Peyton, Susan's voice could have frozen coffee. We need to talk. Actually, I gestured to the empty chairs. We all need to talk. Cora eyed Camden and Kaya suspiciously. This is family business. No, I corrected. This is community business. The kind you should have considered before trying to destroy people's homes. We're not destroying, Susan started. Save it. I pushed the violation reports toward them. You've got two choices. Either work with us to make this project actually benefit everyone, or watch it all fall apart at the council hearing. You wouldn't dare, Cora hissed. We're your sisters. Exactly. Which is why I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing. I met their eyes steadily. More than you gave this community. Susan flipped through the documents, her face growing paler. These would ruin us. Only if you force my hand. I softened my tone slightly. The sustainable plan works, Susan. Better profits, better press, better legacy. You just have to let go of the quick cash grab. And if we don't, Cora challenged. Camden slid his folder forward. Then these campaign contribution records become very public, along with everything else. The sisters exchanged looks, the same silent communication I remembered from childhood. Finally, Susan spoke. We need time to review the new proposals. You have until the hearing. I stood, gathering my things. 3 days. Choose wisely. Outside, Kaya touched my arm. They'll try something else. Count on it. I watched my sisters through the window, their heads bent over the documents. But for the first time in their lives, they're not holding all the cards. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria. Titus just called again. He's backing down on the permit threats. I smiled, remembering all the times my sisters had called me naive for believing in sustainable development, for staying in our hometown, for putting community before profit. Camden, I turned to him, make sure those hearing notices go out today. It's time everyone saw exactly what kind of development this city really needs, and exactly what kind of developer their small-town sister had become. The conference room at Riverside Plaza felt different this time. My sisters sat across from me, their usual confidence replaced by something closer to desperation. Between us lay 2 sets of project plans, theirs and mine. This is insane, Susan pushed my proposal away. We can't guarantee current residents can stay. The numbers don't work. They work perfectly. I pulled up the financial projections. You're just not used to profits taking longer than 6 months to materialize. Cora paced by the window. The investors will never agree. They already have. I slid across the preliminary approval letters. Turns out they prefer sustainable long-term returns over quick, risky profits. Who knew? Peyton, Susan's voice cracked slightly. This isn't just business for us. We've got everything riding on this project. So do the families you were planning to evict. I kept my voice level. The difference is, my plan lets everyone win. The door opened and Titus stormed in, face flushed. This stops now. The council meeting's been moved up to tomorrow morning. I smiled. I know. I requested the change. You what? Cora spun around. Actually, I checked my watch. The press conference should be starting right about now. I turned on the TV mounted on the wall. Kaya stood at a podium outside City Hall, surrounded by community members. Today marks a turning point, she was saying. Thanks to a new partnership between local residents and Russell's Sustainable Development, the Riverside project will become a model for ethical urban renewal. Titus lunged for the remote, but I held it out of reach. Watch. Camden stepped up to the microphone next. The City Council fully supports this innovative approach to development. We're pleased to announce additional green energy grants have been secured. You had no right, Susan whispered. I had every right. I turned to face them. The moment you asked for my help, you opened this door. Did you really think I'd just be your sustainability puppet? We're your sisters, Cora slammed her hand on the table. Exactly. Which means I know exactly how you operate. I stood, walking to the window. Every shortcut, every ignored regulation, every community you've steamrolled. Did you think I hadn't been paying attention all these years? My phone buzzed. Maria sending the latest investor responses, all positive. The project goes forward with my plan, I continued, or it doesn't go forward at all. Your choice. Titus pulled out his phone. I'll fight this. With what? I turned back. Those illegal waste disposal photos, the falsified permit applications, The buried environmental reports? Please, try. The colour drained from his face. Face it, I gathered my papers. You've lost. The only question is whether you lose everything or just your inflated profit margins. Susan stood slowly. You planned this from the beginning, the moment I called you. I planned this the day you laughed at my sustainable development goals. I met her eyes. The day you called Dad's legacy small-time thinking. The day you decided profit matters more than people. Cora sank into a chair. The investors will side with us. We have relationships. Had relationships. I turned on my tablet, showing them the incoming emails. They're already signing on to the new proposal. Turns out ethical development is very attractive these days. What do you want? Susan's voice was barely audible. I want you to sign these. I placed 3 documents on the table. Full project control transfers to my company. You stay on as minor partners, 15% each. The community gets their guaranteed housing. Everyone wins. That's winning? Cora laughed bitterly. It's better than you deserve. I checked my phone again. You have 30 minutes before the investors meet to finalize the new structure. Choose wisely. Titus grabbed his coat. This is ridiculous. We can still... No, Susan cut him off, reaching for a pen. We can't. She signed first, hand trembling slightly. Cora followed after a long moment, not meeting my eyes. Welcome to Ethical Development, I said, collecting the signed papers. The community meeting's at 7. I expect you both there, smiling. Outside the conference room, I leaned against the wall, letting out a long breath. My phone buzzed with a message from Maria. Done? Done, I typed back. Start the permit applications. And Maria, thank you for everything. Any time, boss. Show them how small towns do business. I watched through the glass as my sisters sat in stunned silence, their empire of quick profits crumbling around them. They'd taught me well, just not the lessons they'd intended. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's forcing them to become better people. Now they'd learn what real development looked like, what real success meant, what our father had tried to teach us all along. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand why I'd stayed behind in that small town they'd been so eager to escape. The community was waiting. It was time to build something that would last. These profit projections can't be right. Cora slapped a folder onto my temporary office desk. We've been going through the numbers all night. I didn't look up from my laptop. Good morning to you, too. Peyton, I'm serious. She leaned over my desk. These community programs you've added, the job training, the small business incubator, the childcare centre, they're bleeding money. For the first 18 months, I agreed, finally meeting her eyes. Then they start generating revenue. That's how sustainable development works. But the investors are thrilled. I turned my screen to show her the latest email chain. Because unlike you and Susan, they understand the value of long-term stability. The door opened and Susan walked in, looking like she hadn't slept. We have a problem. Titus is talking to the press. I know. I pulled up the morning's news coverage, claiming we're destroying the project's viability, threatening jobs, the usual tactics. You don't seem concerned, Cora narrowed her eyes. Because in about... I checked my watch. 15 minutes, Kaya is giving a press conference with 30 local business owners who've signed on to our retail spaces. Real businesses, not the luxury chains you had lined up. You can't just... Susan started. Actually, I can. Page 6 of the agreement you signed. Full operational control, remember? My phone buzzed. Maria sending construction updates from our other projects back home. Everything running smoothly without me. This isn't what we agreed to, Cora protested. No, it's better. I stood gathering materials for the morning meeting. You agreed to save your investment. I'm saving the whole neighbourhood. By cutting our profits in half. While tripling the project's long-term value, I headed for the door. Coming? The Community Oversight Committee meets in 10 minutes. They followed, radiating resentment. In the elevator, Susan finally spoke again. Dad would have hated this. I whirled on her. Dad would have loved this. He taught us business was about more than money. You're the ones who forgot that. The committee meeting room was packed. Kaya had assembled a diverse group of local leaders, all eager to participate in the project's new direction. Ms. Russell, an elderly woman, stood as we entered. My granddaughter just enrolled in the job training program. Thank you. I smiled, watching my sisters shift uncomfortably. That's exactly why we're here. Now let's review the first phase timeline. Halfway through my presentation, Cora's phone buzzed. Her face went pale as she read the message. Titus, she whispered to Susan. He's found something. I continued presenting, but kept one eye on them as they slipped out. Through the glass walls, I watched their heated conversation in the hallway. After the meeting, I found them in my office, looking grim. He has proof, Susan said, about the hardware store, environmental violations from before Dad died. From when you two were still partners in the business, I corrected. I have those records too, including the dates you both signed off on cutting corners. Cora sank into a chair. You knew. I fixed everything after you left. Properly this time. I sat behind my desk. Those violations are as much your liability as mine. More, actually, since you were senior partners then. So we're trapped, Susan laughed bitterly. You've thought of everything. Not everything. I pulled out a new set of documents. I thought about what Dad would really want, so I'm offering you a choice. They looked at the papers suspiciously. Option 1. Stay on as minor partners, learn how ethical development works, rebuild our family's reputation the right way. And option 2? Cora asked. Walk away. Clean break. I'll buy out your shares at market value. Susan picked up the papers. Why would you do that? Because despite everything, you're my sisters. I stood, walking to the window. And because someone needs to show the development world there's a better way. Might as well be family. My phone buzzed. Kaya sending photos from the press conference, local business owners beaming with their signed leases. We need time to think, Cora said. You have until tomorrow. I turned back to them. Choose wisely. For once. After they left, I called Maria. How's it looking? Construction crews are ready, she said. The moment you give the word, we start transforming that neighborhood into something beautiful. And the hardware store? Still standing proud. Your dad would be amazed at what you've built from his little shop. I looked at the family photo on my desk. All of us in front of the store, years ago, before profit margins replaced principles. Maybe, I said softly. Or maybe he knew all along what we could become. Tomorrow my sisters would make their choice. But the real decision had been made years ago, when they chose to leave and I chose to stay. Sometimes the hardest part of family isn't holding on. It's knowing when to let go. The city council chambers buzzed with tension as I took my seat at the presenters' table. Kaya and Camden flanked me, while my sisters sat stiffly in the front row. They still hadn't given me their decision. This is your last chance to back down, Titus muttered as he passed by. Things could get ugly. They already were ugly, I replied, not bothering to lower my voice. That's why we're here. The council president called the meeting to order. Camera flashes lit up the room as reporters jockeyed for position. This wasn't just another development hearing. This was a showdown. The council will now hear final presentations regarding the Riverside project, she announced. Mr. Titus, you have the floor. He strode to the podium, oozing false confidence. Council members, what you're being asked to approve today is nothing short of economic suicide. These community programs and sustainability measures will destroy the project's viability. I watched the council members' faces as he spoke. Most were already checking their phones or shuffling papers. They'd seen his type before. Developers who thought profit margins were the only measure of success. Furthermore, he continued, pulling out a folder, I have evidence of past violations at Russell Sustainable Development's previous projects. Actually, Camden stood up, I have those records right here, including documentation showing how Ms. Russell corrected and reported every violation she discovered from the previous management, her sisters. Susan and Cora stiffened in their seats. I hadn't warned them about this part. The real question, Camden continued, is why the original violations were hidden by the previous owners. Perhaps Mr. Titus would like to explain his role in covering those up. Titus's face reddened. This is ridiculous. I demand— Your time is up, the council president cut in. Ms. Russell. I walked to the podium, laying out my presentation materials. Council members, residents of Riverside, I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to show you the future. The room fell silent as I pulled up the first slides. This is more than a development project. It's a blueprint for how we build communities that last. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through every detail. Solar panels that would cut energy costs for residents, job training programs partnered with local businesses, green spaces designed by community members. But the most important part, I said, is this. I switched to the financial projections. Every resident who wants to stay can stay. Every local business that wants to grow can grow. And yes, the project still turns a profit, a sustainable one that benefits everyone. The costs, Titus tried to interrupt, are fully funded. I nodded to Camden, who distributed the grant approvals. Federal green energy credits, state development funds, private investors who understand that ethical development is good business. And the community supports this? The council president asked. We do. Kaya stood holding up a petition. 2,000 signatures, plus commitments from 40 local businesses ready to lease spaces. I glanced at my sisters. Susan sat perfectly still, but Cora was rapidly typing on her phone. Before we vote, I continued, I want to acknowledge something. I learned about development from my family's hardware store, about building things that last, about putting community first. Some people forgot those lessons. I met my sister's eyes. But it's never too late to remember them. The council president called for the vote. One by one, hands raised in approval. Titus stormed out before they finished counting. Motion passes unanimously, she announced. The Riverside project will proceed under Russell Sustainable Development's new plan. The room erupted in cheers. Kaya hugged me while Camden shook hands with council members. But I was watching my sisters. They approached slowly, looking almost lost. Congratulations, Susan said stiffly. You won. We all did. I held out my hand. If you're willing to learn a new way of doing things, Cora pulled out an envelope. We made our decision. I opened it, reading quickly. They'd chosen to stay on as minor partners. One condition, Susan added. We want to learn, really learn, about sustainable development, about building things that last. Like Dad taught us, Cora said softly. For the first time in years, I saw my sisters. Really saw them. Not the polished developers who'd left our hometown behind, but the girls who'd once helped stock shelves in our father's store. Deal. I shook their hands formally. Welcome to the future of development. My phone buzzed with a message from Maria. Construction crews ready. Just say when. Now, I typed back. It's time to build something beautiful. Outside the chambers, reporters swarmed us for comments, but I was watching the community members hugging each other, crying with relief, finally believing their homes were safe. Sometimes the biggest victories aren't about winning or losing, they're about remembering who you were meant to be all along. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to bring your family along for the ride. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings as I walked through the Riverside project with Maria. Construction crews worked alongside local apprentices, transforming old buildings into something remarkable. Hard to believe this is the same place, Maria said, watching a team install solar panels. Remember when your sisters thought this was impossible? Before I could answer, Susan's voice called out from behind us. We were wrong about a lot of things. She and Cora approached, wearing practical work clothes instead of their usual designer suits. They'd been spending more time on site lately, learning the business from the ground up. The community garden's ready for planting, Cora reported, consulting her tablet. Kaya's organising the residents for tomorrow's session. And the job training programme, I asked. 28 graduates already placed in permanent positions. Susan managed a small smile. You were right about the long-term benefits. A group of children ran past, heading to the new playground we'd built first, at the community's request. Their laughter echoed off buildings that now sported vibrant murals instead of foreclosure notices. Ms. Russell, an elderly woman waved from her apartment window, one of the many residents who'd fought to stay. The solar panels are amazing. My electric bill's half what it used to be. That's Mrs. Rodriguez, Cora said. I remember when we were planning to, well, you know. Evict her, I finished. Amazing how things change when you actually talk to people instead of just seeing them as numbers on a spreadsheet. A construction foreman approached with questions about the rooftop garden specifications. As Susan confidently walked him through the details, I remembered how she'd once mocked these hippie features. Peyton, Maria nudged me, nodding toward the site entrance. Look who's here. Titus stood at the fence, staring at our progress. He'd lost several major projects since our showdown, as investors increasingly demanded sustainable development plans. Should we? Cora started. I'll handle it. I walked over to him, coming to check on the impossible project. The market will never support this kind of development, he insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? I handed him our latest financial report. Because the waiting list for residential units suggests otherwise, and those hippie features you mocked? They've cut operating costs by 40%. He scanned the numbers, frowning. This can't be right. It is. I gestured at the site. This is the future of development, Titus. You can either adapt or become obsolete. Is that an offer? It's advice, free of charge. I turned back to my sisters, who were showing Maria the new community centre plans. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a neighbourhood to build. Camden arrived as Titus left, carrying fresh council approvals for our next phase. The city's already getting calls from other developers, he reported. They want to know how to replicate this model. Send them to Peyton, Susan said. She's the expert. The words hung in the air, an acknowledgement that would have been impossible just months ago. Actually, I looked at my sisters. Send them to all of us. We've got something better than expertise now. We've got proof it works. Kaya joined us, excitement evident in her voice. The first small business loans are approved, 10 local shops ready to move into the retail spaces, including Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter's bakery, Cora added, the one we almost displaced. We walked together through the project, past workers installing energy-efficient windows and residents planning their community garden plots. Every corner held a story of transformation, not just of buildings, but of people. Dad would have loved this, Susan said quietly. He does love it. I pointed to the hardware store logo we'd incorporated into the development's branding. His legacy lives in every sustainable choice we make. Maria checked her watch. The Community Council meets in 10 minutes. They're voting on the art installation proposals. As we headed to the meeting, I watched my sisters interact with residents by name, discussing solar panels and garden plans with genuine enthusiasm. They'd found something better than quick profits. They'd found purpose. You know, Cora said as we reached the community centre, I used to think you were naive, staying in that small town, running Dad's little store. And now? Now I think you are building something bigger than we could see. She paused. Thank you for not giving up on us. Inside, the community council room buzzed with activity. Residents shared ideas, local business owners planned collaborations, and children drew their dreams for their neighbourhood's future. This was what sustainable development really meant. Not just buildings and profits, but people and possibilities. Ready? Maria asked, handing me the meeting agenda. I looked around at my sisters, our team, and the community we'd brought together. Ready. Let's build something beautiful. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about showing others a better way forward. And sometimes, the hardest lessons lead to the most remarkable transformations.